Today I want to explain a strategy I use in my classes that deals with our journals. Now, in almost all of my classes, we journal almost every day, and the kids have like a prescription they have to follow. There are certain elements they must include, and then it gets really free because I want it to be a place where they can express themselves freely. I want them to be able to take risks. In fact, I could probably do a whole blog on journals, but I want to really focus on one particular element, and that is gratitude. And I want to talk about how it's so helpful to kids who have experienced a number of traumas or have a high ACEs score or are suffering from the effects of trauma. And perhaps their development has been altered and they're displaying some behavior issues. So gratitude. My students have to, every day in their journals, include 3 things for which they are thankful. And I request that they write these in complete sentences. But the most important purpose is to shift their thinking from maybe this dwelling, these ruminations on that are negative, that stem from their trauma. I've talked before about how they can ruminate and how they can get stuck in these negative, unhealthy cycles of thought. And we've talked about mindfulness and some other strategies, laughter, to get them unstuck. This is also a really great strategy to use. And even if you haven't suffered from trauma, maybe you're just an ordinary person going through life, it's easy to kind of get stuck with your thoughts in an unhealthy place or a kind of a destructive place, really. If you're thinking about, oh, I should have done this, or why can't I do this better? Why can't I achieve this? Those are more negative, or I'm too thin. I'm not too thin. I'm too fat. I'm too short. I'm too short. I'm too whatever, or maybe it's not even a 2. I failed at this. Oh, it's easy to beat ourselves up. And we just kind of start spiraling downward. There's really nothing healthy. There's reflection where you say, all right, next time I would take these steps to avoid this disaster, and I'll have a better outcome. There's reflection, but then there's that negative thinking. So we know that our students come in with these negative thoughts. Perhaps they're not even triggered. Perhaps they're not ruminating. Perhaps somebody just said something nasty to them in the hall as they transition from one class to the next. If I like to use the journals in the beginning of our class. It's kind of a great sponge activity. So if you get them going in their journals right away and you have them focus on these things that for which they're thankful, their thinking is just going to shift right there. Definitely, if they've experienced trauma and their bodies are responding to reliving this trauma, maybe a scent or a sound or a word or a color or any a song or even a temperature. I don't know about you, but I can sometimes just experience a temperature on my skin, especially if I'm outside on a hike, and it just takes me back to my childhood. Fortunately, my childhood was simple and wholesome, but I was thinking about how over the weekend as I was hiking, I was thinking, this hike across the prairie is triggering such fantastic memories for me, but it could be a completely different experience for someone who has experienced trauma. That temperature, that the scent that the grasses and the flowers were giving off, and the bird song. So anyway, my point is that anything could have set this student off, and you've got to do something. And no, we're not going to sit down as a classroom teacher and do therapy. Okay, the therapist would do that, and there is a place for that. But in the classroom, we've got business to take care of. So this doesn't have to take a lot of time. As I've said before, we do wear that therapist hat, but we really are about the business of academics. So if you want to shift their thinking, the simplest way to do that is have them write down 3 things for which they're thankful. And let me tell you, as then you read these journals, it's a real pleasure to see what the students are writing. In the text of my blog, I am including photographs of some of my students' journal entries, and I just excerpted, is that a word? I just took excerpts from their journals and took photographs of those and put these in the blog so you could see the kinds of things for which they are thankful. So what that does is it gets them out of that kind of negative trench that they're in. And it's just a shift. It's a shift of thought, it's a shift of focus, and it helps them then to get out of that triggered sort of trauma response. Obviously, if they have really gone into back brain and are really elevated or withdrawn, it might take a little more, but in most cases, this is really going to be a big help. So it's as simple as that. Now, real quickly, I have my kids come in. I always make them, well, they have to write the date, and I always have them write, "I am wonderful." And then after that follows the 3 things for which they're thankful, and then they're allowed to write about whatever they want. Sometimes I am asking, instead of whatever they want, to respond to a text that we've read. But quite often it's free writing. And it's, as I said, it's a pleasure to read these. It's an opportunity to build relationships. And maybe I will go ahead and just build an entire blog on what I do with the journals. But for this purpose, I really wanted to talk about gratitude. And I reference a study in the blog, and you can search scholarly articles and research studies on your own to find your own evidence. Go to your trusted, credentialed scholarly journals and find these articles about the benefits of positive thinking. I remember reading a book about gratitude, Simple Abundance, and where I started keeping a gratitude journal. And I was an adult before I discovered this. I was an adult, I was married, working, teaching, and a mother before I discovered this. So I was in my mid-20s before I discovered the benefits of gratitude and dwelling in gratitude and grateful thoughts and actually journaling about it. So I think about, I wish a teacher had taught me that in my English classes or in my writing classes. So I love sharing this with students, and I love sharing it with other teachers, and I would love feedback. If you do your own gratitude journaling, that is amazing. Share that with your students. Share the process with your students, and then share with me if you try this with your students. Let me know how it works and what benefits you see. All right, so happy gratitude journaling.